So this is my task 5.2. So in this task we had to create 3 different transaction types. We've got a transfer transaction, deposit transaction, and a withdrawal transaction. First part of this was to create the withdrawal transaction. I have that here. So we've got the instance variables, constructor, the assessor methods, and our methods. So what were the instructions? So the requirements of the different. Right. Withdraw transaction, constructor, as required. Print the withdrawal transactions details. Right here. This basically reports on whether the transaction was successful or not. If it was, it gives a message indicating this. If it wasn't, it gives also a message indicating that it wasn't successful. Execute. Debits the account. Yeah. Alright, so initially set success to false. So if it's already been executed before, it shouldn't be executed again. So we throw the exception explaining why. But if it hasn't been executed before, we debit the account using the function that was created in the previous exercise. This returns a boolean telling us whether it was successful or not. If that debit wasn't successful, we throw an exception, and really pretty much the only reason is either the user entered in a negative amount for withdrawal or they had insufficient funds. So if neither of these things happened, we know that we had a success for the transaction. And once we get to the end of this, the transaction's definitely been executed at least once. So there's that part. So rollback is basically undoing what we've done in the transaction. So, the opposite of a withdrawal is a deposit. So when we do a rollback, we check if the rollback's already happened. If it has, throw the exception. If the transaction never succeeded, that wouldn't make sense to reverse it because it never really occurred in the first place. Same with executed. If it was never executed, you cannot reverse it because it never really happened in the first place. But if those things aren't true, and we are able, so we attempt to do a deposit, and really, if that's successful, which the only reason it wouldn't be is if the user entered either an amount too great, or I'm pretty sure I put something on the deposit to check, like I limited them to like $1 million or something. Or maybe that was in a different exercise. Where is that account? Okay, it was a different exercise. So the only reason it would fail then is if they entered a negative amount. So yeah, so if it failed, it warns the user, and if it didn't, it tells the user that it worked. What else do we have on there? Success. Print, already been through that. Yes, that's pretty much it for that. And the deposit class very much works the same. It's pretty much just a mirror image of the withdraw transaction class. Very few differences, if any. And then the transfer class is essentially a combination, or somewhat of a combination, of a deposit and a withdrawal transaction. So essentially, it does all the same checks as the other classes. The main difference with this one is that it doesn't require a success instance variable, and the reason for that is that the property will simply return, if the deposit was successful and the withdrawal was successful, then clearly the transfer was successful. But if not, then the transfer was not successful. So basically, very similar. So with execution, we have to try to do a withdrawal and then a deposit. So if the withdrawal succeeds, then try and deposit. If the deposit succeeds, if the deposit didn't succeed, then you've got to roll back the withdrawal, because if one fails, the other one should be reversed. And yes, when rolling back, basically you have to check whether it's happened before, just like the other classes, whether it's succeeded before or executed before. So first, roll back the deposit. And if that worked, then roll back the withdrawal. And if that worked, let the user know. And if it didn't work, also let the user know. So I guess let's just give it a whirl, see. I'll prove that it works. So if we want to withdraw, let's withdraw $20. Let's try and deposit 30. We'll do a transfer 44. And now let's prove that it won't allow the user to try and withdraw too much. There you go. If the user goes beyond, okay, that's a little different then. Try this. Yeah, so if you put in more than what the account actually has, we'll complain, let you know that you cannot withdraw due to insufficient funds. So yeah, that's pretty much it for that one.